political parties, obviously hoping for your vote, and maybe I'm too cynical, but maybe you should be pretty careful about what they'll tell you ahead of the 1st of November elections. Well, the candidate being put forward by the Democratic Alliance to be the mayor in the city of Joburg is Dr. Mpho Phalatse. I'm pleased to tell you she's actually in our studio now. Dr. Phalatse, good afternoon. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Why do you want to be the mayor of Joburg?
Well, I am what Johannesburg needs. I've got a lot of experience in public service, 15 years to be exact. I've spent 5 years as a counsellor. I gave up my job, my profession as a medical doctor. That's how serious I was about helping improve the lives of the people of Johannesburg. I spent the first 3 years of those 5 years being an MNC. I was responsible for health and social development, did really well in that portfolio. We made some changes that are continuing to improve the lives of people today. I spent the next 2 years, or the latter part of the 5 years, in opposition. So I've also got opposition politics experience. I'd say from an experience, qualifications point of view, I really have everything that it takes to take the city of Johannesburg where it needs to be. But I also come under the Democratic Alliance brand of good governance. A Ratings Africa study has shown that the top 5 municipalities in South Africa are DA-led municipalities. Here in Gauteng, the Auditor General will tell you the best-run municipality is Midvaal, which is a DA-run municipality. So with all of that to offer, Johannesburg being broken as it is, I believe that I definitely am what the city needs to fix its issues.
I mean, you say that the city of Joburg is broken as it is. How did your party improve things when it was in power before, Herman Mashaba resigned and you eventually lost power? Can you really say that Joburg improved during that time? I don't know if people felt an improvement.
We only had 3 years in office. A lot was achieved in that 3 years. Just in my portfolio alone, and like I said, I had health and social development. We extended hours of service in 25 of the 80 clinics in the city. 27. And the plan was to keep extending until all of them were open for extended hours. This is, of course, because people often have to choose between coming to work or going to the clinic. And being a doctor myself, I've seen many cases of people coming in emergency asthma, for instance, because they had to choose work for fear of losing their jobs. Today, a lot of people in Joburg enjoy that still. We rolled out substance abuse treatment centers. When we started, the city only had one. It was a 12-bed facility for teenage boys. We started rolling out outpatient facilities, so there's no bed capacity issues. In the 3 years, we managed to roll out 5 of those in areas that had the biggest burden of substance abuse. We rolled out mobile clinics for communities who say, well, we're too far from the clinic. The law says you have to be within a 5-kilometer radius of a clinic. And we rolled out these mobile trucks for informal settlements, for instance, where the land is not yet proclaimed. We're not able to build brick and mortar facilities. They then have this option. We've got 10 of those going around the city daily, assisting our people. And that's just in the one portfolio that I was responsible for. But so much else was done in other portfolios as well. We electrified informal settlements. We did upgrades, we surfaced roads, we extended hours of service even in our libraries. We did a lot. We formalized informal settlements. We gave houses, about 8,000 houses. We gave title deeds to people who've been in houses but did not have proper ownership of those houses. We increased capacity within the JMPD by bringing in an extra 1,500 officers. And these are just some of the successes. Now, we only had 3.
Okay, I'm going to... I realize it's a campaign. I realize it's an interview, but I'm going to stop the campaigning for a minute. There are huge problems in Joburg, right? And some of these are very structural. Some of these are to do with people coming in here. Here's a really complex problem in Joburg, and it's been going for a long time, which is that many people in Soweto have huge electricity bills which they cannot afford to pay. There are massive, Eskom tells us, there are a massive number of illegal electricity connections. So what they do is they do load reduction. You would be the mayor for people of Soweto. How would you resolve that problem? The bills are very high. People cannot afford the electricity. They demand, in fact, a flat rate of 300 rand or so. Either way, you now have this problem that's been going on for a very long time, in fact, back to the 1980s, and has not been fixed. What would you do?
Well, I think this was left to go on for too long, you're right. I think there was too many things wrong with the model that needed to be fixed, and we're now here, where, we're at a point of no return, and practically nobody in Soweto has consistent supply of electricity. And I've been in Soweto, I was there even yesterday, and it's true. Where I was yesterday, there have been 2 years without electricity. The solution to this, the city has an entity that's responsible for electricity supply, City Power. A lot of the areas with challenges in Soweto are Eskom supply areas. You talk about the debt. Yes, there is a lot of debt, and Eskom has started writing it off. I think about last month they announced that.
So that's fine. How would you fix it?
Yes. So how I would fix it is we would speak to Eskom to take over the Eskom supply areas.
Which the city of Joburg is already planning on doing. So what would happen then? Through
City Power. Now, when you take over, you need to consider the fact that there's a culture of non-payment already in areas like Soweto. But there are places like Sandton, which are supplied by Eskom, which pay for their electricity. Now, you want to take that as well. You don't just want to take Soweto because you've got revenue considerations to make. We will do that. So that'll be our approach.
Sorry, I don't understand. What will you do? You're going to make Sandton more like Soweto?
No, we're going to allow City Power to supply electricity in Soweto Eskom supply areas as well as in Sandton, for an example, Eskom supply areas. The reason for this is because you've got non-payment in Soweto. It costs money to provide electricity. You need to think about how you're going to cater for it. If you take paying areas as well, it kind of evens out while you're dealing with the culture of non-payment, while you're getting people who can't afford to register on the city's ESP database so that you know who needs help and who needs to be subsidized.
But I mean, City Power doesn't have enough money at the moment.
No, City Power can supply electricity. What do you mean City Power does not have enough money?
The problem is that you say you want to deal with the culture of non-payment. People can't afford to pay, right?
Yes.
There's a whole lot of issues here. Now, if you just say City Power must take over this problem, whereas City Power is going to have exactly the same problem, which is that there's no money.
They're not going to have the same problem. So let me explain what I'm saying. I'm saying to you, instead of just taking over Soweto, you also want to take over an Eskom supply area where people are paying. So that at least it evens out. While you do that, you at the same time deal with the culture of non-payment. Now, there's different types of non-payers. It's not every non-payer that can't afford to pay. There are businesses that are non-payers and they can afford to pay. There are people who are working who are non-payers and they can afford to pay. That is where you're going to need to start doing education, enforcement, and make sure that people are paying. But there are people who've lost their jobs. There are people who've always been unemployed, and those need to then register on the city's database for indigent residents who require a bit of assistance from the cities through subsidies. They get rebates. That is what I mean. So you need a multi-pronged approach, taking into consideration the different types of people you are dealing with. There is money out there. But of course, we're dealing with population growth. That's part of the bigger picture. In a place like Soweto with a lot of backyard dwellers, our infrastructure is not coping with the population numbers at the time. So you need to also do an assessment of your demand, look at your supply, and look at how you can beef it up. You need to upgrade a lot of the infrastructure. Where you don't have adequate in-house capacity, you need to then open up to independent power producers to help you meet that demand.
Okay. This is the first time that the Democratic Alliance is facing voters on a large scale since it adopted a policy against race-based redress. In other words, the party that you represent opposes affirmative action and black economic empowerment. Do you believe that most voters in this country agree with the DA on that?
I don't think most voters understand what the DA is saying. And this is something that I have taken on, and I will be going on a campaign to help people understand the DA's approach. I'll tell you why. If you look at what's happened in this country since 1994, inequality has actually worsened.
Yeah.
So South Africa has the biggest Gini coefficient in the world. We're the most unequal country in the world, and it's worsened since the ANC took over in 1994. And the reason for this is because the same black people were benefiting over and over again. It was the few politically connected black people, and therefore this was benefiting only those people and creating more inequality, even amongst the black race. Now, what the Democratic Alliance is saying is, let us do means testing, rather. It's a scientific approach, so it's not going to marginalize anybody. If you really are in need, prove it. Show us that you are in need. So a means test will then be fair. It won't be based on race. Can I also tell you something? As a councillor in the city, I've had white families that I've had to feed through our feeding scheme. So it's also unfair to assume that because somebody is of a particular race, they carry privilege into their current living environment. And I've seen it. And that is where the Democratic Alliance is saying, we believe in fairness, we believe in diversity. Let us use a scientific means of determining who qualifies for assistance or opportunities so that it's fair and everybody can access opportunities. And that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Dr. Mpho Phalatse, thanks very much indeed. Councillor Dr. Mpho Phalatse, I should say, the DA's mayoral candidate for the city of Joburg in the local elections.